Hey people, it's Miss Winter again. So in this video, I'm going to do a little recap on the layers that we talked about in the previous video. I'm also going to go into detail about how to multiply layers on top of each other to create that look of a double exposure. And then I'm going to be talking to you about layer masks, and you can utilize those to isolate specific colors or maybe enhance the specific colors of certain areas. We're also, I know you're like, what is happening in this video? So many things. We're going to do some cloning and we're going to use the Band-Aid tool. And then just to touch on some other cool things, we're going to do dodging and burning. And then again, I'm going to just recap how to save things as a Photoshop file and a JPEG. Are you ready? Let's do it. Okay. So what we need to do today then is we need to pick some photos that we are going to edit from my contact sheet from last time. So we're going to put things on top of each other eventually. So why don't we look at my head, I'm thinking so seriously. We're going to get this one. So I'm going to open this with Photoshop. And then we're also going to why don't we get one of me in the snow? I look so happy back then. So we are going to get this one as well. So hold on a minute. There's just a whole bunch of people tried to come in the room and they shouldn't have. How outrageous. Okay, so I've got my two images here. So we're going to recap on layers and then how to multiply them on top of each other. Okay, so what we'll do first, I'm just going to turn up the brightness of my screen. We're going to make a few small adjustments to these images before we multiply them and then start going into detail about the layers. So very first, I'm going to open the adjustments panel because it's a really nice way of making some quick edits. This time I am going to use brightness and contrast. So I'm going to open up this panel and then I am just going to slide. Ooh, look at this. It's going to slide that up like that. We want the contrast to be high. No, I'm going to lower that contrast up. Lower that contrast up. What am I even saying? Okay, I'm going to lower that contrast. Love it. And then I've got this happening. Okay, so really happy with this. Let's go back and have a look at the layers. So as you know, we've got a few different things up here that we can access. If these panels aren't showing up for you, you click on window and you can add them here. But we can also toggle this layer on and off. What? Look at the difference. Okay, that's going to be my first layer that I'm going to use when I combine these two images. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and save this as a Photoshop file to begin with. And that means I can come back in here and mess around with that layer. The second thing I'm going to do is come into this picture of me in the snow and I'm going to edit that as well. And I think I'm going to do a similar thing. So brightness and contrast, let's bump that up. Although in this one, it doesn't seem to work as well because I think the sun was behind me. So what I'm going to do then is open the curves and I'm just going to, so basically in this part of the process, yeah, oh my God. I'm just going to make the edits to the image that I want. And then I'm going to save them. All right, done. Okay, so I've saved them both as a Photoshop file and I can come back here and I can see my layers. So as you know, I can turn them on, I can turn them off. Now, the next step that I'm going to do is and I'm going to do this while I'm talking to you about it. So I've recapped layers, you understand, you can turn the things on, you can turn them off. What I want to do is actually combine flat versions of both of these together to create a double exposure look. So a double exposure is something that you can do with a film camera when you actually, so you've got your film and pretend that this is the lens of the camera, right? So the lens opens and it lets light in, which is using science and technology, creating the image on your negative. So what happens with a film camera is if you have a manual film camera, you can open the lens twice and it will give some exposure onto that negative twice. And so you get two images on top of each other. And so what we're trying to do here is create a digital representation of that exact thing. So what I've done is I've saved these photos already as Photoshop files, and I now want to flatten these. So what I can do is I'm going to click on the top layer and hold Shift and click on the very bottom layer. And then these little lines up here is where I can access some more different opportunities. And I'm going to select flatten image, and that's flattening like it would a JPEG. I'm going to do the same thing on this image. So I'm going to select all of them, click on the lines here and go flatten image. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work within one of these images. So I'm going to come back to this picture of me smiling and I'm going to go Command A and Command C, which is basically select all and copy. If you're on a PC, it would be Control A, Control C. And then so I've copied it now. and I'm going to click back into this image and I'm going to go Command V or Control V to paste it in. So I've now got in this file 2 different images. Now I want to save this as a separate Photoshop file that I can keep coming in and accessing. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and this will be my edit image. Okay, so now I have these 2 files on top of each other, and I've got this one here that I can actually just, I'm not going to save it because I flattened it. I don't want to save that. So now I've got this one I'm working with, which is called Edit, and then it's my image. And so I've got my 2 images on top of each other. Now, there's a couple of different ways that I can make this look like a double exposure negative. The first one is we have this little selection up here where it says normal, and there's so many different things that you can play. I'm just going to guide my mouse down them so you can see all the different ones. Heaps of different things that you can play around with here, right? What I can do is I can hit multiply, and that means that that top layer turns into almost like a piece of acetate, or as if it's like as transparent as glass. And so you can see everything below me. Another thing that I could do is have it on normal, but I can slide the opacity down. So my opacity at the moment is 100%, which means it's a solid image. So I can actually click on here and I can slide this down, and it creates almost like a dream-like effect. So it doesn't have the same kind of contrast it would as if I had it set to multiply. But it does, you can still see both images. And this is a really good one to mess around with if you're trying to create things that reflect dreams or memories, or anything that might be like imagined or invented even. So it could be like fairy tales. It could be, because I know some people are looking at different storytelling methods. I know that people are looking at dreams and REM sleep. I know people are looking at memories. This is a really, really great technique if you're trying to evoke those kinds of feelings in your images. So here we've got it down to 63% opacity, all right? What is the next thing that we're going to do? Looking at layer masks. Okay, cool. So this is how you create that look. You can also, if I turn this back up to 100%, I could make this multiplied. So it's creating that kind of like clear, transparent layer over the top, but I could still move my opacity down to create some kind of dream-like look. So if it was that I can remember the church in this image, which is the church where my grandparents got married in Sweden, I can remember the church like nothing else in my brain, but I can't remember maybe the image of myself or something like that. So you can make these representations and these images have more meaning based on the opacity of the person or things like that. Another thing I wanted to do was, we've mentioned it here, how to create a layer mask. So you can do this to isolate color or enhance the color of a specific area. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn this image back up to 100% and off multiply. So I'll make it normal to show you what I mean. So a layer mask is something that's really, really helpful with landscapes. It's really helpful if you want to do isolated color, as I've just mentioned, amongst some other things. So all you need to do for a layer mask is duplicate whatever layer you're working on. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to duplicate it. So to do that, I pressed Command J, or you can click on your layer and you can select duplicate layer. And so I've duplicated that layer. And what I'm going to do now is I am actually going to, actually, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can duplicate the layer and you can do things directly onto this image. Alternatively, if you want to, say I wanted to make it that the sky was black and white, because I can't say my theme is memories. And I have this really distinct memory of being in the snow and having a really great time. But there's parts of my memory that are sort of like starting to fade over time. And so I want to indicate that by turning a portion of the image black and white to indicate a memory fading away. So what I can actually do is I can come to my adjustments menu and I can turn my saturation completely down like this. And then what I can do is I can come back to my layers. Where's that noise? And I can, sorry, someone's playing music. And I can see here it already has a layer mask. And I'm going to show you how to add one. So I'm going to delete the layer mask. So say you've just made the whole thing black and white in the hue saturation layer. I can click on that. And then if you come down to the bottom here, there is a rectangle with a circle in it. So I can actually click on that and it's going to create a little white square like that. That is my layer mask. So in a layer mask, you can get a pencil and anything you paint in black, I'm going to show you this right now, like this, basically removes that layer and reveals what's underneath it. And anything that you paint in white, so I'm going to do that right now, puts it back and means that that layer is still activated. So what I would want to do for this one is I want to turn this bottom portion of the image back to the color that it is, because I want to show that I have that memory, but my memory is starting to fade, so I can't remember the background. So what you can do is you could use the selection tool, or you could even use the polygon lasso tool. And I might just create a line across the bottom just for the sake of this tutorial so that it doesn't go for too long. I'm just going to create a line where the color is going to start again. Like that. And then I'm going to get the pencil tool. And in this, I'm going to just draw over that so that you can see that portion of the image. So see how now some of it's being revealed in color and then other parts are black and white. Alternatively, we might want to do the flip actually and go inverse. And then we might have, whoops. What I was going to do was make it so that the sky was actually colorful and the image was black and white, just to give you an idea of it. So basically what you could also do, we'll put another layer mask on there, and we could have it so that the sky, and you can just paint it manually too if you want to, is colorful, and maybe some of this. And then the rest is black and white. Obviously, this doesn't look as refined as you'd make it, but I'm just showing you the skill. So you could have it so that some part of the image is colorful and some of it is black and white to just represent a specific part of your message or something like that. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do, we've talked about that now, we've talked about that. We're going to do cloning and the Band-Aid tool. So I'm going to turn these things off. Okay, we're back to the color image. There I am. It's me, Miss Winter. And so I've actually duplicated this one, and we are going to try and clone something out of it. So anytime that you're cloning or using the Band-Aid tool, always duplicate the layer that you're working on in case you make any mistakes, because otherwise it can be really sad if you make a really big error and then you've kind of used your base image for that. So what we're going to do, there I am. We are going to, okay, look at this landscape, so beautiful, so wonderful, but there's some kind of like machine here that's currently doing something that we want to get rid of. So we might say that we want to clone out, let's find some other things. We could clone out maybe this little rock down here, and we want to also get rid of this thing here too. So what I've done is I've got obviously my original base layer and I've duplicated it, and I'm going to work on the duplicate. So I'm going to call it duplicate just so I know which one I'm dealing with. Now the Band-Aid tool is a quick little fix tool. So sometimes you might need to hold your mouse down to see where the tools are. So I'm going to first do the spot healing brush and then the healing tool. So these are the Band-Aid tools. So basically what this is doing is it's picking up things around it and like covering them. So it's picking up clean areas around where you're clicking, and it's putting that on top of where you've clicked. Now, this is a really good thing for small adjustments. So see, like on this one, I've got my tool and then I've clicked on this and it's kind of picked up on the data around me and gone, okay, it's picked up some kind of like clean space and it's put it where I've clicked it to get rid of that black mark. Whereas the healing brush, you can actually press Option and you click the area you want to move and you put it there. So that's a little bit more refined. Now with the cloning tools, I'm going to get that right now. The cloning tool is under here too. Where is it gone? Or maybe, oh no, here we go. The cloning tool looks like a little stamp. So this is here. So the cloning tool is almost like a more extreme version of what I've just described. So I could get, with the cloning tool, I'm going to click Option and click on the thing that I want. And then I could literally make it so that there's heaps and heaps of those little cars there. Now the opacity, so see how that's a little bit faded in that example there. That is because up in the brush area here, I've got it set to 90 or the flow is 50. So you kind of have to mess around with those things. But basically, if I wanted to cover up this little car thing that's here and get rid of it, I could click on Option. And I'm going to select the area that I want to copy and almost like paste on top of it. So I'm clicking Option and I'm selecting this area. So I've clicked it. And then I'm just going to really carefully line that up and create the illusion that it was never there. So if I click off this duplicate layer, you can see that the car is still there. But if I turn it back on, we've managed to actually hide that. And I think it looks, oh, it makes such a difference to this image, don't you think? Oh my gosh, it's like a completely transformed image. So that is how you can use the cloning tool. Now, if we come back, the dodge and burn tool, okay, this is good. So on this same duplicate layer, we're just going to mess around with the dodge and burn tool. So if you click, that one is the smudge, and then we've got the blur tool. But so we're going to have to click on these 3 dots, and it should be in here. There we go. They're right down here. So the dodge tool looks like a lollipop and the burn tool looks like a hand. So with the dodge tool, what we can do is lighten up areas that might have quite a lot of dark shades. So if we look at this little picture of my face, we could use the dodge tool just to add a little bit more brightness in there so that from a distance you could see my face a little bit better. That's probably a little bit too light. You can also do it, say you wanted to have a little bit of detail in my clothes or something like that, or you might want to see some stitching or something, you can use it to lighten up those areas. And so I'm just going to click on and off that layer to show you. So see how you can see a little bit of difference there. This tool is also something people use if they want to lighten up someone's teeth or something like that in an image as well. Now with the burn tool, so we'll get that one up here, we can do this to add a little bit more detail in areas that are really bright. So we might sometimes add it to create the illusion of some dark shades in the snow here. And sometimes it's nice to use it, say, in a sunset so that you can get a little bit more detail in the sky. So I'm just going to do that here so you can see that. And if we click on and off, you can see that it creates a little bit more depth and a little bit more texture and detail in the image. So that is how you use those ones. And now we're going to save it as a Photoshop file again. So we've already done that. So we're just going to keep saving it as a Photoshop file. And now that we're really happy with it, we're going to export it as a JPEG. So I can put it in my visual diary. So I'm going to export it as a JPEG. And then I'm going to save it back into the folder that I have been experimenting in. And that's it, people. We've done it. We have looked at, let's do a quick recap. So we've recapped layers. We've looked at how to multiply layers on top of each other to create the double exposure look. We have looked at layer masks. We've looked at the cloning tool, the Band-Aid tool, the dodge tool, and the burn tool. And we've just saved it as a JPEG again. You've done it. Amazing. All right, people. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.